Hi everybody, I hope you are all having a good week and that all of you are staying warm. Here in Bismarck, the weather has been a little bit more on the chilly side this week. Okay, I am going to talk about chapter 4, which is families. I'll talk a little bit about how families are affected during the adolescence period of a child and also how the child is affected by their families. Um, a couple of things that I found interesting at the beginning of the chapter are that parents and people in general make the mistake of thinking that the adolescence period of a child is going to be a nightmare, that adolescents are difficult and that that's just the way it is for all of them, and that is a misconception. So the book said that when parents think that their kids are going to be very difficult teenagers, um, they kind of make that happen. They kind of program the brain and do things to make that happen. The other thing that I found interesting is that adolescents and their parents are not as different as everybody think they are. They think that there is a huge um, generation gap in between them and they are opposites. So what researchers have found is that in matters of principles and morals, the parents and their kids are very similar, but they differ and they argue about personal matters like clothing, like music, like what to do in the free time. But in essence, the parents are not that different from their adolescent kids. Okay, I am going to talk a little bit about family systems theory. And what this implies is that individuals cannot be understood in isolation from one another, but rather as a part of their family, as the family is an emotional unit. So we cannot isolate an individual from their family and think about that individual by itself, because what the family does is going to affect the individual and what the individual does is going to affect the family. So as I said, there is an emotional unit in the family. Some families are more close together than other ones, so there is fusion. These families are really bonded together, and the impact of an issue of one individual really affects that balance and really affects the whole family. So these are families that are going to sit down around the table and talk about the problems, and these are families that are very affectionate and very bonded and close together. There are some other families that are not as close, and this we can call differentiation, is that impact is not as strong. It doesn't mean that the family doesn't love each other, it's just they deal with problems in a different way. These families are not as affectionate, and they don't have to discuss the problems of one individual as a whole unit. They are a little bit more independent. So the equilibrium in a family is that state of balance in which everything is flowing normal, everything is okay. The things are predictable, the routine doesn't mean that it has to be perfect, but the routine is as usual. Everything is flowing as normal. So there are some things that are going to affect that equilibrium. One of the things is that the book said that for a lot of the parents are having adolescent kids when they are going through their midlife. So the kids are growing fast, the kids are physically attractive, they are planning their life, having and talking about a lot of projects, while the parents, on the other hand, are worrying about their physical appearance, are starting to realize that they have no much freedom and they cannot really change the course of their lives. So that fact will affect that equilibrium in the family. Another thing is changes in family needs and functions. So, for example, when an adolescent or a kid reach that adolescent age, um, that's going to be a lot more expensive for the family, since adolescents uh, care a lot about what they wear, so they are going to request for brand names, for things that are in style. They are gonna want to have the latest phone technology, gadgets, and whatnot. So that will affect the equilibrium. And also, for an adolescent kid, the family is not going to be their center or the people who they spend the most time. They are going to spend more time with their friends. That also will affect the equilibrium. Transformations in family relations will affect it too. So, especially on the late phase of the adolescence, the kids are going to gain more power and they are going to have more family in the more influence in family decisions. So that balance is going to be changed and affected. And puberty also, puberty itself is going to affect the balance. During the puberty there are going to be a lot more arguments and the kids are going to be less close to their parents. They are going to want to have more privacy and they are going to be less affectionate with their parents. Another thing that will affect the equilibrium is violations of expectations. So the kids grow up thinking that when they reach the adolescence, they are entitled to a lot of things like freedom, like a lot more autonomy, and sometimes their parents don't think the same way. So this creates a lot of conflict when the kid thinks that he or she should be given more freedom, or like for example, bedtime should be now at midnight because the kid is an adolescent and the parents are gonna think that on weekdays it should be at 10. So that's going to clash and create conflict. And yeah, next thing I'm going to talk about parenting styles. And there are two aspects of parents' behavior toward adolescents that are critical. So the first one is parental responsiveness, which is the degree to which the parent responds to the child's needs in an acceptive, supporting manner. On the other side, we have parental demandingness, and is the extent of which the parent expects mature, responsible behavior from the child. So the combination of these two things is going to create 4 different parenting styles, or the combinations between these two: responsiveness and demandingness. Okay, so I recreated the graph that was in the book, and this is how the chart looks like. So, for example, a parent that has high demandingness and high responsiveness is going to be a authoritative parent. You have no idea how many times I had to rehearse that word. That's really hard to pronounce for me. Authoritative. So this style of parenting is where the parent is warm but firm. The kids have autonomy, but the parents have the last word. And the parents include their kids in the discussion and solving problems, and they explain why the rules, why the discipline is important. So as consequence, the kid is going to grow up being responsible, being self-assured, being creative, being intellectually curious, socially skilled, and academically successful. Okay, so another combination of demandingness and responsiveness is low responsiveness by high demandingness makes an authoritarian parent. So in this style of parenting, the parents are going to have high value on obedience and conformity. So these parents think that the kids should just accept the rules and follow the rules because I said so, and there are no questions asked. These kids, as a consequence, are going to have a hard time having autonomy and independence. And if you think about it, these kids are being told what to do all the time. So when they are given a situation in which they are free to make a decision, they are going to feel insecure and they are going to have a hard time. Okay? Another combination is low demandingness and high responsiveness. So we have an indulgent parenting style. These parents are more accepting, and they are passive when it comes to discipline. They give their kids a lot of freedom, and their priority is to make sure that the kid is happy. So as consequence, these kids are going to feel entitled to everything. They are going to be impulsive, and they're going to be immature compared to other kids the same age, since they are going to act up when things don't go their way. And finally, we have the last combination, which would be other side, low demandingness and low responsiveness. This is an indifferent parenting style. In this case, the parents pretty much don't care about the kids, and they are going to try to minimize the time that they spend with their kids. And as you can imagine, as a consequence of this, the kid is going to grow up with a lot of problems, with a lack of self-esteem, and with a lot of behavioral issues. So let's go back to each one. I'll give kind of like an example for each one, since this week was parent-teacher conferences. I thought about these parenting styles and what's gonna happen in the students' homes. So for example, if a kid is failing a class, so an authoritative parent is going to discuss with the kid what's going on,